Hello and welcome to 2020 Coaching Convos with me, Julie Crabb. And you've joined me on Case by Case. And this is a podcast focusing on reflections with guest coaches from cases in their coaching practice. I'm going to say it again, confidentiality is king in relation to our conversations here. It's a really fundamental element of our professional coaching practice and of our ethics and our values. So you might hear us sharing information about the coaching practice with clients, but I can assure you that none of it will be attributable to any individual that we have worked with. So listen in to what might be learned. I don't quite know yet today, but looks like we might be talking about some themes, maybe from several case studies. Let's see how we go. So who is my guest this week? Well, she's a retired NHS General Practitioner. She trained to be a coach in 2019. And since then, she's coached GPs and nurses all the way through COVID-19 pandemic. And also she participated in the Coaching with Conscience initiatives. She is ICF ACC accredited. You're going to have to look that up, or maybe I'll put something in the podcast description. And interestingly, she's also a co-leader of the Coach Advancement Alumni Bookclub. So welcome, Jayne King of JK Coaching.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you so much for inviting me.
You're very, very welcome. It's good to have you on the podcast today. And we were just talking that you've been out running in the rain already this morning.
Yes, for my sins. I've decided it's a little fitter, but mostly it was to get into my own head, get away from whatever's going on in the week. So I run 2-3 times a week, about 5 kilometers, which you said that's impressive. And I wasn't impressed because I'm not doing marathons or half marathons. I'm just in a comfortable zone of enjoying my runs. So I've decided if I enjoy it, I'm more inclined to do something.
Absolutely. Isn't that the truth? Yeah.
Even getting wet. Wet was actually quite nice this morning.
Okay, good stuff. So Jayne, I know that you really like to work with clients to help them move forward in whatever challenge they bring to a coaching session. But I always like to ask guests before we get started into the case that they bring, what is it that drew you into coaching in the first place?
That's a good question. So whilst I was a GP, I did some educator training. I used to work in sexual health as well. And I used to train other doctors to provide contraceptive services and teach them various techniques. And so I had a sort of educational background as well. And then I became an appraiser in the general practice service. So that meant I was listening to GPs at least once a year and trying to see how they wanted to move forward with their own personal development. I didn't dip my toes into GP training as such, which could have been the next natural step for various reasons. But then I used to also do some training for the foundation doctors, the doctors who were year 1 or year 2 post-qualification that used to come to the practice. And then I did a bit of mentor training. It was actually on a mentor course that somebody said to me, why don't you do some coach training? And I didn't know much about it. But then we had some free coaching available to us. So out of the 7 GPs in my practice, 6 of us took it up. And I'd never been coached before. I didn't know what coaching was, and suddenly realized what this could be. And I think to my shock, I thought, why hasn't the NHS been doing this for decades? It should have been there a long, long time. But I'm sure like lots of industries, it's just been a little bit late to the game. So the next thing that happened, there was some funding available for training. So some colleagues went off and did dermatology and other people did other things, but I decided to do coaching and got some funding together, and off I trotted to do coach training as part of my peri-retirement plan. So I had a plan to retire when I was 60, which is what did happen. And I did the coach training about 2 to 3 years before that. And boy, was I out of my comfort zone when I did that training. I think as we were saying earlier, it took till I think module 2 on the course of 3 modules was, I think finally something clicked. It was very interesting, sitting back and being comfortable with silence, not taking over, not guiding somebody, not leading somebody. I really, really had to sort of rein in a lot of what I used to do. I used to think I do think I was a good listener as a doctor, but there was a certain aim to get everything packed into that 10 minutes and make sure the patient went out content with what they knew the plan was going to be. So it was a way of packing that up, which was totally on its head by the time I came to coaching. So then I finished that, and then I was doing some reciprocal coaching with peers. Did do some NHS coaching, as you said earlier, particularly around the pandemic time. So that was very much everything was on Zoom. So I did my original training face to face, and then suddenly it was on the ferry coming home that the first lockdown happened. So that was it, straight onto Zoom, all my coaching. So so I did do we did some supportive coaching, I would regard it, for GPs and nurses working locally. There was myself and a colleague actually done the training at the same time as me. And so then I was doing it 2 days a week while I was still working. And then I retired. So world's my oyster now, so I can coach however I want to. But that's another challenge, trying to work out how you work out. So it's been 3 years I've been retired. So the transition's been interesting.
Yeah, it is. I'm the same actually. I've been retired for 3 years and into coaching practice now, and it is quite an interesting transition. I love your term peri-retirement plan. That's so important, isn't it?
I knew I couldn't just switch off completely and switch my brain off, and I could have carried on doing some GP sessions, but I was ready for a change, and I thought this is an opportunity to do something different as well. And having gone off to medical school in 1981, and that's all I've done. So what else could I do? So I'm still trying to discover that. So that's the other interesting thing about coaching and being coached is what else is out there? What else can I do? Because I'm calling this my golden phase. I
like it. Yes,
still got a bit more to give.
Good stuff. Lots of people seem to have different names for this part of our lives.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's great. Thank you for that. Let's focus in then, Jayne, on the specific case and themes that you're bringing. And I'm kind of interested to know in these situations what that might tell us about various things like the client and their role in the coaching process, or maybe some of the coaching skills and techniques that you've used that you have found that work really well. Any particular things that we can learn from it. So maybe it would be good if you start with the backstory to one of the cases, so that we can get a flavour of where it's happening.
I do. I was invited to join a local charity that's a brain tumour charity that uses coaches and counsellors to be one of their coaches, and it's a voluntary role. But I like their ethos. I like the fact that it's very structured. The coaches are all accredited, need to be accredited. They usually use the GROW model. I can't say that's something I specifically would use. And particularly with the clients I've had, you have to be really flexible, very patient. People aren't signing up for packages. So the sessions can be very ad hoc. You might see one person once and then you never see them again. Or somebody might want a quite intense number of sessions. So the people I'm coaching have either got benign or malignant brain tumours. Some are some are post-surgery, or they're caregivers. There have been a couple of people who've been bereaved as well. So they've wanted coaching as part of their post-bereavement journey to look at what life's going to mean to them while they haven't got that relative in their life or their friend in their life. So I think I learned straight away how you have to be very flexible, and I call them more coaching conversations. And they may not pass any coaching exams, but I think the most important thing is, and I think the one key thing is to provide the space and time for those people, being aware in a general sense of particularly probably the main thing that crops up is fatigue. So we would normally expect coaching clients to be, ready. Here they are, prepared for their and I don't know, half an hour, 45 minutes or an hour, whatever we provide for them. And wouldn't expect somebody to just sort of want to close the session because they're not well, or they've maybe a little bit late coming on because they've had a bad morning. So there's all sorts of things you just have to let go and just realize that you have to accept this person's in a difficult place at the moment. But
Yes.
despite all of that, I'm particularly with what's set up with the charity, it's all about thriving and purpose. And that's what they want. They're really looking for some purpose in the time they've got left, a lot of these people. Or maybe with the benign ones, their lives have changed so dramatically that they're looking for, well, what do I do now? I can't do the job I had before. My relationships are different. So how can I move forwards and find some purpose in what I do in the rest of my life? So it's a lot of it will involve grief and loss for what's happened, but focus of the coaching is looking forwards, and that's what they're usually signing up for. There's also counselling available with the charity as well. So for some people, if they're still very distressed, it maybe the counselling is more appropriate. But then we all as coaches have to flag up when that may be needed.
Listening to you there talking about fatigue with those particular clients has reminded me, I've been revisiting a phrase that we often say in coaching practice, which is about meeting people where they are. And each time I come across that phrase, I view it in a slightly different way. But what you were saying just now made me think about it again. That it is very much about recognizing their physical and mental needs as you're having that coaching conversation with them. Do you ever come across anybody who is in their last stages of life where they're not so positive, they're not so much looking for purpose?
Yes, and I think for those people, maybe the purpose is for looking at relationships, looking at how they want to manage their last weeks, months, years, a legacy, maybe. Just trying to think in terms of what they. So it's not I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, but it's, well, how am I going to leave things with certain people in my life? How am I going to leave my affairs? And they will even. I haven't had so much involvement with this, but they may even want to do so quite specific end of life planning as well.
So often when coaching, we talk about how people want to be and do and what they have, and that suddenly in my mind becomes very condensed when there's a limited time frame in which to kind of get those things sorted. So are there any particular skills that you draw on, Jayne, to support people at that very critical time in their life?
I've already mentioned listening. I think it's listening, as you said, it's meeting them where they are and trying to enable them to see what they might want or need. I think sometimes it may be very obvious, but sometimes it isn't. And it may well be that the worrying about other people may not be serving them very well, because the other people, they can't affect what other people are going to think and worry about. So if actually they focus on themselves, I think that's why a lot of them will come to coaching. So it's a space that they know, and I find they will certainly tell you things they don't share with others because they don't want to worry other people. So I feel I'm holding things a lot of the time, and those who want to move forwards, where we can start looking at those steps if they want to do that. So there may be some goal setting, but a lot of it, I say, is more sort of holding things for them, which may not sound like true coaching. Where's your action plan? Where's your goals? But it's not that scenario. But it is coaching. It is actually touching base about what they need, what they want, what they feel. So often, I think asking them, perhaps, which may sound a bit when they've had major surgery, asking somebody how they feel, but they do tell you things, and they come out with all sorts of metaphors and things that are just real. It's just how they are at the moment. So, and maybe they're saying it in one word but not expressing it. Oh, I'm fine, but they're not fine. They may be trying to disclose something, and I think as a coach, then that's our job to maybe just get them to see that and maybe see what's really important to them. So I think that's one of the questions I like to ask at some point, what's really important at the moment. And then, they'll come out with something that perhaps they felt they couldn't be brave about, or that they didn't want to share because they were worried who that might hurt.
Mm. Yeah, so I mentioned confidentiality at the top of the episode,
Mm,
but my goodness, is it critical in these conversations when, like you said, the person may be sharing with you something they never share
mm,
again or
mm,
have done before or with anybody else. Yeah, it's a very special holding place to be.
mm,
Yeah.
mm,
Mm. And with the relatives, Jayne, I'm assuming that this is one-on-one coaching, but it occurred to me, is there any place for group coaching with people who
mm,
have
That's a good
who
question. I haven't done it once, although one of the cases I was just going to touch on slightly was unusual because somebody who'd had a tumour had hearing difficulty, so wanted their caregiver, to be in the session with them, which was fine. Um, what I hadn't appreciated was that there was the dynamics that would change in the coaching relationship. So everything was having to be slightly translated um, to the person, and the person who was the caregiver had very different views on what the coaching was going to be like and how they wanted it to be, which was quite challenging. So I only did one session with that person, sadly, because they were about to embark on some treatment. So again, that's the bit I sometimes feel a bit sad about, because people drop in and out, and it's not for us to chase them up. It's not, it's their choice whether they want the coaching. And so I don't know quite how that journey ended with
mm,
that person.
mm. And so for anybody thinking about being coached with a carer or coaching somebody with their carer,
Mm.
what would you say is important in, now you look back and in retrospect, what would be important to perhaps agree before the session starts?
I think, and I did have some supervision around that session, which actually enabled me to realise if there was going to be a second session about the recontracting,
Oh
was
yeah.
was going to be
Hmm.
absolutely crucial, because it was a little bit spontaneous what was going to happen. So of course you just agree, oh, of course, yeah, of course you can have somebody in your room with you. I was so used to that when I was working as a GP. And again, the dynamics then would often change when you had somebody else in the room with an elderly relative or a young person. So it was always a little bit yeah, it's always different. So the contracting would have to be about who the coaching is for. So I've never done couple coaching. I've done a little bit of group coaching, but I'd be thinking more in terms of coaching perhaps a group of people with brain tumours. And I think there are certainly peer support groups within the charity of people who've got similar tumours who can support each other, and they have a facilitator rather than a coach.
Okay. Mm.
I'm aware locally, our local hospice has support groups for younger people with life-threatening illnesses, life-limiting illnesses. So if you've got a similar, not so much a similar illness, a similar scenario, then I can understand then how group coaching would work. I think they also have a group for breast cancer survivors, for example. So, and again, coaching can be utilised then to sort of take people's journeys forwards. So
Mm.
it's all about forward thinking and new thinking, and uh, seeing beyond what's happened. I did have a conversation once with a cancer coach, and I'm sure he won't mind me quoting what he said, which really stuck with me, about when somebody's had their treatment, and then they're fine, or they're told you don't need to be seen for a year or 2 years. It's oh, okay, so what now? And he firmly believed that's the sweet spot for coaching. He calls it the sweet spot. He said that's when coaching can really come in and make a difference, when they've got all the stress of the treatment out of the way. Well, where do I go now with my life? What do I do next?
Yeah, that's really interesting. And going back to what you were saying about the dynamics, there's
Mm,
something very different, isn't there, to being in a yes, in a very uncomfortable position with your physical health, and then suddenly finding yourself alone, even if you're, and potentially unsupported, even if you're
Mm,
been declared healthy.
mm.
I mean, in your experience, is he says that's the sweet spot. In your experience, what have you found the same, or is there a different sweet spot?
Um, I I think I'm more taking what he meant as they're going to be open to coaching as opposed to when they're in the middle of treatment. I think the people I've had experience with, it's offered as part of the services that the charity offers. So for some people, it may be they've had some counselling first, so they've sorted out maybe what's distressing. But it is about planning. It's about future planning. It's about looking at what they can do with the time that they've got left. So there is a sense of positivity to it, which I find extraordinary every time I meet one of them, because they're all looking forwards and looking ahead.
Mm, yes, it's part of our human
Mm,
nature, isn't it? Generally
mm,
speaking, that we
mm.
we look to survive and thrive.
And maybe I'm seeing a little, perhaps a select group who've asked to be coached, so they have asked for that to happen. Uh, but I can think, yeah, I can even think of just thinking about fatigue. Again, obviously, just thinking confidentially of somebody who has had a benign tumour removed and gone back to work full time, regarded as back to normal, let's say 18 months, I think, or so after all the treatment, but was struggling and was really finding that quite hard. And it was just interesting with coaching to find what was coming out that could be helpful. So just the acceptance that, okay, I've had major stuff done to me, which may sound very obvious, but I'm cured, I'm well, I'm back doing the job I'm trained to do. Why am I struggling? Why am I sort of crashing on a Thursday when I used to work, through weekends as well? And it turned out about management of fatigue in somebody that was otherwise well, somebody whose expectations were so high in that I'm supposed to be as I was before. And then the understanding comes that actually I'm not as I was before because this has happened to me. And even just simple things like turning off the screen when you're in a meeting, so if you're in a big sort of Teams meeting or a Zoom meeting, then just that overstimulation from having to sort of keep on the screen all the time. Whereas actually just, I'm still in the meeting, but I'm going to turn my screen off, and feeling you can give yourself permission to do that.
Mm,
That has a huge impact on whether it was headaches or fatigue or those other things. It's often quite simple things that I didn't know, but this person was able to work out during the coaching sessions.
mm,
Just thinking about what might work or why something might be happening.
mm. Yes, you're right. And just thinking alongside somebody, or even
Yeah.
having them
Thinking
witness your
partner
thought
is another one.
processes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thinking partner.
and
That's another lovely term, I think, for being a coach.
yeah,
So
yeah,
if you
it
tell
is,
people,
isn't
what
it?
do you do? I'm a thinking partner. What does that mean? But I love I love what it says. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Jane, I know you said you don't use the GROW model, which is kind of a traditional
Hmm.
coaching practice, and I know you'd use a very blended model. And we were talking before we came online about the way that the ICF core competences have shifted.
Hmm.
Um, can you, for listeners, just say how you would describe the way that you coach?
Uh, Again, it's. I think when I go back to my original training, and I think this is where I got a little bit hung up on it. I felt everything should happen in a particular order, and once you've ticked off, oh, I have evoked awareness. Okay, and I can skip that bit. I can go on to the next bit, but it doesn't work like that. And I think I've worked out you loop and loop and loop all the time. I think I've had it described to me there should be an elegant takeoff, and then you've got your flight, and then there should be an elegant descent and landing, which I think is a
It's
lovely way
lovely.
of putting it. And
Yeah.
I think that's something I've learned well, and trying to pin down initially what the real goal or the real focus of the session is going to be. So I suppose with some of the clients I've got, it's what they say straight away is what they want to focus on, but sometimes it isn't. So that can take time to try and sort of tease that out. And as I've said before, sometimes you even have to recontract as well. When we come to the elegant end, I try not to crash land things. But I do like that term. And something else cropped up with coaching. You mentioned earlier I co-lead a coaching book club, and our current book is Rising Strong by Brené Brown. I'm giving her a shout out because it's a great book. And she talks about the messy middle, where you have a start and an end, you have a messy middle. And I'm not a great user of tools and techniques, so this has all been taught to me. And I've decided as I coach, I'll hold those things very lightly. Because if I am sitting there thinking about what tool I should be using, I'm not actually thinking about the client in front of me. And I think, again, I've heard the analogy a bit like driving a car. If you have to think about what you're doing when you drive a car, you won't be able to drive it properly, will you? So it is something which I think with our training has to be ingrained in us. It becomes a part of how you do something. So you don't even think about it unless things are going a little bit off piece. And in which case, that's where I think the competencies, the boundaries, the ethics, the confidentiality, all those things, I really like, particularly that the ICF have brought those into competencies, because that speaks to my values and my ethics about how we should be with a client.
Yeah, what you've just said reminded me of something I've been reading about called dual awareness.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of, it's a very kind of what seems to me sophisticated capacity to be able to have one part of your brain in your own self-awareness of how you're responding to the relationship and the dynamics and the conversation, whilst retaining as much of our presence as we can with what is going on for the client too. It's a
I think
very skilled part.
It is, yes. And I think I'm finding the more you do it, it's like anything. I think the more you do it, the more you practice it, that sort of stronger that muscle becomes. But I think being truly present, and I've learned, I'm not sure I was a great listener to my gut instinct. I probably did over the years, but I'm very much more aware of it now. And when something is really in me, so I'm very much aware if I'm starting to feel very uncomfortable or something's really struck me in the way somebody's saying something. I think it is listening out to those key words, you know, the wonderful metaphors people drop in, and the fact they keep saying something over and over again. So it's listening well. I think acting as that mirror to them. So when you're hearing it, they're speaking it, but are they truly listening to what they're saying, and really are they in tune with what they're saying?
Yes. Jayne, I'm really conscious we're coming up close to the end of the podcast episode, and I want to ask you a tricky question, if I may. So what I'm wondering is the cases and the themes that you brought, what do they say about you as a coach that you want listeners and watchers to take away with them?
I think I'd like people to take away that we can use coaching conversations in all aspects of life. You don't have to have a session with somebody. I think that's number one. I've heard some really great coaches say how just having their conversations with their teenagers, with other people in their lives, has been greatly enhanced by coaching. So I think that's number one. It doesn't have to just be in coaching sessions. But I think for all of us, it's truly listening to what people are saying, not just jumping on the first word they've said. As coaches, we're trained to, observe somebody, their body language. I didn't touch on that as a case, but there was one where I'm having to do it on the phone because the person's got visual problems. I find that very challenging because I can't watch what's going on because I learn a lot visually. So actually not being able to see somebody and see what they're telling me, but they're not speaking. So what they're actually telling me by their body language or their movements. So I think being good observers, being good listeners, but equally it's having that instinct to ask the question, the one that I say needs to be asked, that you believe needs to be asked, of course, without any attachment. You're thinking that's going to land well with them. But I would hope, because of our training, that we are trained to do that, to ask that sort of question that may make them think a little bit. Or I mean, we all know when we've been asked a great question, and then it's just, oh my goodness, how come they've seen that and I haven't noticed it when you've been coached yourself? So
Yeah,
I think just having that courage and bravery as coaches to ask those questions, if that's what we think's needed in the moment. But it's up to the client because it's client led. It's their session. I'm a firm believer that we are their thinking partners, and it's up to them how they use their sessions.
brilliant. Thank you. I am super impressed with how very elegantly you tackled that horrible question right at the end of the episode. Thank you, Jayne. Before we finally close, it would be really nice, I think, if you could share how people can contact you and what things you've got going on in the pipeline at the moment.
Mhm. So I'm going to continue working with the brain tumour charity. I've got some contacts with the local hospice as well. I'm currently doing a course to be a grief and loss certificated coach as well. So I'm going to be providing that to whoever may want to have my services. I'm available via LinkedIn. I haven't got a website, but all my details are on my LinkedIn profile.
Perfect. We'll make sure those are on the episode description.
Yeah,
Thank you so much, Jayne. It's been really, really interesting. Thank you, Jayne King of JK Coaching.
thank you,
And
Julie.
thank you. And thank you to listeners and watchers. And if you like what you see and hear, please subscribe and share and tell me what you want to hear more about in 2020 Coaching Convos with me, Julie Crabb. Till next time.